Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and today I am back with my 4th round matchup at last weekend's Brooklyn Premier Challenge. If you've not seen the first 3 games already, definitely check them out. They are all linked in the description below. Moving on to the 4th round, I was super excited for this match because it was against a great player named Chris Danzo, also known as Lunar. He actually made it to Day 2 of the 2015 US National Championship, so a very top competitor both in the area and in the country, and I was very eager for this matchup. You'll see his team has Gengar, Groudon, Xerneas, and Salamence. The 2 he did not bring were Liepard and Ferrothorn. Mine, of course, is Palkia, Kangaskhan, Groudon, Cresselia, Amoonguss, and Landorus-T. In team preview, it seemed to me that my Groudon could kind of sweep through if I successfully set up Trick Room, and if I could take care of his Groudon. So those were my 2 main priorities, basically knock his Groudon out, and kind of sweep from there with using mine. Xerneas was definitely a little bit scary. The Ferrothorn wasn't too much of a concern since I did have the Groudon, which is a pretty nice answer to it, but did have to be careful, and that's why I ultimately opted for Kangaskhan. I didn't think Landorus-T and Amoonguss were that great in this matchup. Lunar's team was pretty similar to the last round, and you'll remember there that Dorian had a Salamence, a Groudon, and a Xerneas, and Landorus-T and Amoonguss weren't really helpful in that matchup, so decided to keep things around the same, but instead of leading with Kangaskhan this time, since there was no Smeargle in his team like the last round, I decided to just opt for Groudon and Cresselia to put on some more offensive pressure. Before we get started, this game is actually from his perspective since it was on stream and I wasn't able to save it on my own battle videos, so you'll be watching from his perspective, but as always I'll be commentating from my perspective. And without further ado, let's just jump into it. As always, if you enjoyed these videos, please show your support by leaving a like in the video. I'd really appreciate it, as we are going to get into the battle. So like I mentioned, I'm going to go with my Cresselia and my Groudon, and he actually leads with his Gengar and his Groudon. This is already a little bit scary because obviously he's probably going to be faster here given that I'm min speed, and I don't know whether he has Earth Power or Precipice Blades. He might also be predicting a Protect from my end on Groudon. So this first turn I'm already really scared because the lead matchup's definitely not in my favor, and Gengar's a Pokemon that has so many options as I've used before in the past. So he could go straight for the Shadow Ball Eruption play, the Taunt play, you know, there's so many different things he could do. In retrospect, I already think, you know, looking back at the battle, that my first turn play wasn't that great, but what I opt to do is to switch Cresselia out into Palkia. The hopes was that he was just going to go double up maybe and go aggro offensive, for example, with an Eruption and a Shadow Ball to knock the slot out. And so I figure that it's relatively obvious my Groudon's going to protect, so if I can catch him off guard and get an Earth Power up, then, you know, my strategy works out perfectly. But he goes for the skill swap with this Gengar, and at this point I'm already like, wow, I might have just lost the battle right there, because I don't have great answers to a Groudon with skill swap Levitate, which is ironic since the last match I won because I had the skill swap onto my Groudon. So I'm already really scared because his Eruption there does a decent amount to both of my Pokemon, and that means that my Eruption is already, you know, the damage output from that is significantly less. And I'm thinking, wow, if I just went for the Protect Trick Room play that first turn, things would be looking at least a little bit better right now, because then I could skill swap onto my own end. So this next turn I thought he was just going to go Earth Power or Precipice Blades onto my Groudon, so I end up protecting it and trying to set up Trick Room, but his switch into Xerneas is really, really smart because now Xerneas puts on immense offensive pressure as well. At this point I'm really scared. I don't really know what I can do because I can't pick up knockouts, and he can immediately knock out both of my Pokemon with a Moonblast and an Earth Power, so I decided if there's any chance I want to win this game, maybe I can, you know, pull out the switch into Cresselia and pull something off, because if I just lose both of my Pokemon that turn, then I ultimately just lose the game because there's not very much I can do. Sure, I can get some damage off against both of them, but it's not going to be enough. The next turn I decide to switch my Palkia out into my own Groudon and maybe go for a skill swap of my own, thinking that at least I can pull something into my favor, but at this point, you know, I really started panicking. I just realized I had no answers to the Groudon which had Levitate onto it, so I go for the skill swap onto my own Groudon, and the last turn was pretty nice as he Moonblasted into my Protect and Earth Powered into the Cresselia slot, but at the same time, it's looking pretty poor for me right now. I've been playing really passively, and I haven't been using my Trick Room turns up as well as I really would have hoped to. He gets another Eruption off, and 2 Eruptions are almost enough to knock out Groudon. The Moonblast also comes out from Xerneas and knocks out my Groudon, so skill swap there didn't even do anything. And it's not like if I kept Palkia in that I would have been able to do much. Maybe go for a Helping Hand Earth Power, which in retrospect at least could have pulled something off. I think this whole game I played way too passively, and the plays I made honestly didn't make too much sense. Like, there was little reason to really go switch out there and go for the skill swap play, because even with the Levitate, you know, what more can I do? So bunch of crucial errors, honestly. Should have just been going for the offense. I think Helping Hand Earth Power with the Palkia would have been pretty nice. This next turn, I actually go for the Helping Hand play onto Kangaskhan, hoping to at least pull something off. But his Flamethrower gets a crit there and actually just knocks out my Kangaskhan. Not like it really mattered too much, but at least without the crit, I would have been able to get an attack off and knock out the Xerneas. And, you know, then I'd be able to outspeed his Groudon out of Trick Room and maybe pull something off. So that really just sealed everything up at this point. There was absolutely nothing I could have done. And now without any answer to Xerneas, him having knocked out my Kangaskhan, you know, I go for a last effort Helping Hand just to see how much Earth Power would do in case we, you know, maybe matched up in top cut if we both made it there. But he's smart enough to just go for the double protect to stall out Trick Room. Now, a fun play you can normally make with these two Trick Room users is actually go for the double Trick Room when it's about to end. So you reverse your Trick Room and then set it up again, and ultimately, you know, get a couple more turns of Trick Room. And, you know, that's a really nice play that a lot of people don't see coming. But at that point in the battle, there was absolutely nothing I could have done, so I decided to just forfeit because then Xerneas just goes for the Dazzling Gleam. And very, very, very convincing for him there, 4-0 basically. And I was pretty shocked because, I don't know, just looking back, like, it's to have losses that are that one-sided are really demoralizing, and I was pretty scared since the first 3 games I felt like I was pretty much in control for the majority of it. So, looking back at the game, I think the number one thing that I pinpointed is just playing more aggressively with Palkia and with Groudon. But that first turn basically completely caught me off guard. Did not see the skill swap on Gengar coming out. If it were anything else like a taunt or a Shadow Ball, then I think that the game would have played out completely differently because it would have given me a great chance to set up Trick Room. But because he was able to skill swap on a Groudon, I, you know, was on kind of panic mode, and I didn't really figure out any great answers to it, especially when he was smart enough to bring out the Xerneas as well. You know, another good play I could have made was predicting the Xerneas to come in, or predicting Groudon to protect that one turn, and going for a Flamethrower rather than protecting my own Groudon, because that just meant that Xerneas was able to switch in freely, and that's, you know, just not something you can allow for to happen. Kangaskhan maybe switching in and going straight for a double edge onto Xerneas, or a fake out, who could have helped me out a little bit as well. If he didn't get the crit there onto Kangaskhan, I wonder how things that would have played out, but I figure that the double edge recoil would have been enough for me to feint anyway, so it wasn't a game changer. Though, if Xerneas were removed from the matchup, then at least Palkia could deal with the rest of my opponent's team much better. But he played that match really excellently, and I was just making suboptimal plays, trying to figure out a solution to something that I was really not very familiar with. And it's kind of ironic that after Skill Swap really saved me in round 3 and helped me a lot, it was the reason why I completely lost this round. So, a lot of silly mistakes probably on my end, and definitely not a perfectly played game, but he played excellently. And that's the thing, you know, when you have to deal with teams like this and strategies you haven't seen too much before, or you know, that Pokemon comes out with that one move you weren't expecting, you really have to adjust well and figure out how to come back from it. And ultimately, I just didn't do a very good job with that. So I knew I could afford a loss in that tournament in Swiss. If I won the next 2, then I'd still move on full top 8, but it's still definitely demoralizing to have a loss that was that one-sided. So I was hoping I could rematch with him maybe in the future, because it was a great game by him, and I knew the adjustments I had to make moving on in a best of 3. But excellently played by him, and we do take a loss, so we are now 3-1 in the tournament going into the last 2 rounds. That's going to be it for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like always if you did, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace.